Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Gura Shri Charanaravrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Bande Gura Shri Charanaravrindam Bande Gura Shri Charanaravrindam Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Charanaravrindam Bande Guru Shri Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nritya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Romanchakam Taranga Bhajo Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Nekunjayuno Shri Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad-Prasada Satana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavad-Prasada Satana Triptan Kritva Triptin Bhajata Shadeva Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Bhajata Sadeva Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Shiradi-kama Dhavayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Shiradi-kama Madhura Lila Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Bande Nekunjayono Ratikelisidhyai Jayali Jukti Apekshaniya Nikunjayono Ratikelisidhyai Jayali Jukti Tatrati Dakshat Atibalabhasya Bande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Ativaravasya Sakyat Haritvena Shamasta Shastre Uktastatha Bhavyataiva Sadave Kintu Prabhoja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashi Charanarvindam Kintu Prabhoja Bande Gurashi Charanarvindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dayam Stubam Tasya Yashastin Sandhyam Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Dayam Stubam Tasya Yashastin Sandhyam Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna, Jadavaya Nama, Jadavaya Madhavaya, Keshavaya Nama. Gopal Govindaram, Shri Madhusudam, Giridhari Gopinath, Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda, Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava, Bhagavad-Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan, Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Haribo. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Shri Radha. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra, Jaya Baladev, Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman, Sitaram, Nitai Gaur Haribo, Nitai Gaur Haribo, Nitai Gaur Pramanandi, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramsa Prabhajakacharya, Ashtottara Sarasishimari Skon Pratishta Vibhiti Samstapakacharya, Vaishnav Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana, His Divine Grace, Abhayacharabhina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai, Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai, Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Prem Si Kaho Si Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vindi Ki Jai, Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Jai Pramanama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama, श्री सच्चिदानंद स्मरण गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरनाय अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। युग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहदांग ट्रांसलेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री शिव राधा कृष्ण गोप राधा कुंद श्याम कुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। डेलोरशिप श्री शिव राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री शिव मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना करण सिंगरे भगवान की जय। जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। बोलो श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरिबो। All glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Shrilatam Kanakhalaye Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho Yato yato yami tato narsimho Bahe narsimho hrudaye narsimho Narasimhamadim sharanam prapade Tavakar kamalavare nakha adbhuta shringa dalita hiranyakashipu tanubrunga keshavadrita narahari rupa jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare jai jagadisha hare tavakara kamalavare naka adbhuta shringa dalita hiranyakashipu जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशव धृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशव धृता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव ओ नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय भक्त प्रह्लाद जय भक्त प्रह्लाद जय भक्त प्रह्लाद जय भक्त प्रह्लाद प्रह्लाद महाराज भक्त प्रह्लाद महाराज भक्त प्रह्लाद महाराज भक्त प्रह्लाद निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव भक्ति विघ्न विनाशक लक्ष्मण नरसिम्हा स्वामी भगवान की जय भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्या कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्ववताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण
Vilasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha. Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Ei Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Hey Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pabo Ei Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Hey Abhilasi.
Je tomara sharan loy tara vanch purna hoy.
Je tomara sharanala tara vancha puna.
Kripa kori koro tare Vrindavan vasi.
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavan vasi.
Morai Abhilas Bilas kunj diyo vas.
Morai Abhilas Bilas kunj diyava.
Nayane heribo sada yugal ruparasi.
Aminayane Nivasada Yugalantarasi.
Ei nivedana daro sakiranu gata koro.
Ei nivedana dhara sakiranu gata kara.
Sevadikara diye koro nijadasi.
Sevayadikara diye koro nijadasi.
Dina Krishna dase koe namora hoy.
Dina Krishna dase koe namora.
Shri Radha Govinda preme sada yena basi.
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 Yani kani cha papani brahmatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani sapapani Brahma hatyadi kanisa. Tani tani prana shanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani cha papani brahmatyadikani cha tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade.
Yani kani sapapani Brahma hatyadi kanisa. Tani tani prana shanti pradakshina pade pade.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Vrinde Devi Tulsi Maharani ki
Jai. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi Priyaye ke Savasata Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyaye ke Savasata Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devi Priyaye Kesava Satya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki. O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled, bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavana. My desire that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always feel me love Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam ki jai. Cheto Darpanam Janam Bhava Mahadava Nirvapanam Shri Karika Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Vivardhanam Tadipadam Purnamrita Shradanam Sarvatmasnam Param Paravijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shakti Tatra Pita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Etadrusi tava kripaya bhagavan mamapi durdhaivam idishamya jani nanuragaha trinadapi sunichena tarodapi saishnuna amaninamana Kitaniya sada hari Nadhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam vaja gari shaka maye Mama janmane janmaneshwari Bhavata bhakti rahitu ki tvai Oi nandatanuja kinkaram Paritamam vishame bhavam buddho Kripaya tava pada pankaja Stitaduli sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galara sudharaya Padanam gadagada rudaya gira Purakai nishtam bapukada Tavanama grahane bhavishyati Jugaitam nimishena Chakshusha prarusaitam Shunyaitam jagat sarvam Govinda virahena me Aslishavapadaраtam pinashtumam Adarshanar marmahatam karotuva Jata tathava vidadhatulam pato Matpranatastu saivana paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai Namo Mahavaranayo Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratveshi Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Saminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays that benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which all is anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself the Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire for women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your God's devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of birth and place me as one of the atoms at the yellow of the street. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your name? When will my voice choke up and when will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? Oh, Govinda, feeling of separation,
I am considering the moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything. He is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharni Nirvisesa Sunyavani Paskatya Desatarni. Aganyatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya. What? Oh, yeah, I was waiting for that. To blaspheme. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to independent names of Lord Vishnu. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature in pursuance to the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. Based on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruit of activities of karma kanda. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava is carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa tarabhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasad Bhute Smadhavati Namaste Sasatiri Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Nabhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jitaha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parikshana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakara Nivitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shivarsavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaya Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Bhaktita Shigor Karuna Shakti Vikrahaya Namostute Namo Krishna Ramba Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Satitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhavam Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Jase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Kam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Jayatam Suratur Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bhi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Bhivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Swaner Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha, Anadi Radha Govinda Sarvakarana Kanaram Chaintam Ani Prakara Sadma Sakalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesa Surabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Manam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kranantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Prakoti Kamaniya Visesa Sobham Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chankra Sadvanamalyavam Sri Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsara Yoratapi Manasomani Pungamanam So Pyasti Yad Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotir Yes Chaktirasti Jagadanda Chayanda Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Dio Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Busa Suktarya Mevinigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasapati Bhavita Bhistabhirya Evani Jurupa Tayakalabi Koloka Evani Vasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidesa Vilokayanti Yam Sham Sundarama Chintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistana Anavatana Makaroba Vanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramampamamyo Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananta Koti Koti Svasesa Vasatadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahman Iskanamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanta Satani Sute Traigunya Tad Visayaveda Vitayamanam Sadvavalambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmataya Manasuya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Golokanamni Nijitamni Tale Chatasya Devi Maheswari Damasate Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vitasya Yena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Sististiti Pulaya Sada Vasaktireka Chayevi Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasya Chitestasa Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Naita Tapritakasti Etu Yasam Bhutama Pitata Samapaitikar Yat Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Deparchadevi Santa Taslantarma Vipetya Dipayate Vivite Samana Dharma Yastada Gevihicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakar Nanarnava Jali Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagananda Saramakupa Adhara Sakti Mavalambya Param Samurtim Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Asyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagananda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalavi Seso Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basman Yatasma Sakalation Ujesa Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvadatra Pramaya Isa Jagananda Vidana Karta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbadvande Pranama Samaya Sikanadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahigagan Mambu Marudisasya Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Resesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Sutayastapam Se Brahma Dikita Patagava Dehasta Jiva Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakita Prabhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasvindra Gopa Matavenda Mahusva Karma Pandana Rupa Falabhajana Mata Noti Karmani Nita Hatikintu Chabakti Bhaja Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kamasa Japranayadi Biti Vatsaya Moha Gurgora Vasavya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Paramapurusha Kalpatara Drama Bhumishnitamane Ganama Itoyamam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Jyoti Param Apitada Swatyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bhishavadi Sirabi Byastu Sumahan Nimesa Daktu Vavajiti Naira Priti Samayat Vaje Svita Dvikam Tamaham Iu Gola Kamitiam Vedanta Ste Santak Chitivakshara Katipaya. Gee, Guru Vastaka prayers, Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. From my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy names, dancing in ecstasy, singing, playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the sanctum movement of because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Therefore, my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple with Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship with the Lord. Therefore, my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. Spiritual master always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzed, lick, chew, junk, and suck. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. Offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime, erotic and Madhavana qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. Offer my most humble basis unto the lotus feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, from my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful basis unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Grantharaj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 9. Yena prajanam uta atma karma rupa bidanam chabidam vyadatta Narayano Vishvasrik Atma Yunir Etachcha no Varnaya Vipravarya. Yena, by which, prajanam, of those who are born, uta, as also, atma karma, destined engagement, rupa, form and feature, abhidanam, endeavors, cha, also, bidam, differentiation, vyadata, dispersed, Narayana, the Supreme Personality Godhead, Vishvasrik, the Creator of the universe, Atma Yuni, self-sufficient, Etat, all these, Cha, also, Na, unto us, Varnaya, describe, Vipravarya, O chief amongst the Brahmanas. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O chief amongst the Brahmanas, please also describe how Narayana, the creator of the universe and the self-sufficient Lord, has differently created the natures, activities, forms, features, and names of the different living creatures. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Every living being is under the plan of his natural inclinations in terms of the modes of material nature. His work is manifested in terms of the nature of the 3 modes. His form and bodily features are designed according to his work and his name is designated according to his bodily features. For example, the higher classes of men are white, Sukla, and the lower classes of men are black. This division of white and black is in terms of one's white and black duties of life. Pious acts lead one to take birth in a good and highly placed family, to become rich, to become learned, and to acquire beautiful bodily features. Impious acts lead one to become poor by parentage, to be always in want, to become a fool or illiterate, and to acquire ugly bodily features. Vidura requested Maitreya to explain these differences between all the living creatures made by Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O chief amongst the Brahmanas, please also describe how Narayana, the creator of the universe and a self-sufficient Lord, has differently created the natures, activities, forms, features, and names of the different living creatures. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Haribol. So this is very interesting verse and purport, because Vidura wants to know why there are so many different types of species, forms, and attributes, natures, etc., of the different living entities. And it's an interesting question. Why are there so many different living entities? You have the aquatics, you have the plants, you have the reptiles, and then you have the birds, and you have the mammals, and then you have the human beings going all the way up to the demigods. And there are an infinite number of planets in one universe, and there are an infinite number of universes. And everywhere you see all these varieties of forms and natures and activities and physical characteristics and so forth. So why is this a fact? Well, it's because people have free will, limited free will, of course. And based on that limited free will, they make all kinds of decisions. Now, there are decisions you make that can be right, and there's decisions people make that are wrong. Based on all those decisions that they make, they begin to form their next body and where they're going to be and what nature they have, what color they have. All these things are going to be determined by their activities that they perform and the desires that they have at the moment of death. So it's a big, let's call it a big mixture of possibilities. Just like you have three primary colors, red, blue, and green, so they can be mixed in an infinite number of ways. And when you go to, let's say, Home Depot, and you order, and you have all the different palettes of colors that you can get, and it's a mixture of those three primary colors, and that mixture can be, let's say, 10% of the first one, and 60% of the second one, and 30% of the third one. Or it can be 30% of the first one, and 60% of the second one, and 10% of the third one. So there's an infinite number of ways that you can mix the colors. I don't know if you've ever gotten paint, and once you choose the color that you want, and there's a whole bunch of different varieties of colors, then the salesperson will mix the colors for you, and as long as they do it correctly, you have the exact color that you wanted. That's a specific mixture of those three primary colors. Well, there are three primary qualities: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And now, based on the desires and the activities that we perform, we can have a myriad number or a huge number of different mixtures of those three primary modes. And therefore, at the moment of death, all this is taken into consideration, and plus, because our actions are based on those, that mixture of the three modes, and then also the unfinished desires that we have. And based on that, Krishna gives us a particular body. Now notice it says Narayana, it doesn't say Krishna. Why is that? Well, that's very interesting, because Krishna explains in the Bhagavad-Gita that he is not obliged to do anything. Everything gets done by his desire and by his expansions. So, therefore, Krishna personally has no duty, nothing to achieve, because he's already the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is perfect. He does, that doesn't mean he cannot do anything. He does engage in seemingly types of duties that he chooses out of love and devotion for his devotees. So, therefore, he becomes Arjuna's chariot driver. And he also is the savior of Draupadi. And so he doesn't have to do any of those things, but he does it out of love and devotion. But when it comes to performing work, like the creation of the material world, like populating the material world with living entities, he does that through his expansions, like Brahma or like Narayana. So that means that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no particular, he has no particular duties that he has to perform, and he's completely aloof and transcendental, but yet he's also present in two ways everywhere in the creation. And first, by his expansion as Paramatma in the heart of every living entity, and also in every atom of the universe. And secondly, by his expansion as Brahma Jyoti, which is within and without everything. So in two ways, he is all encompassing and all present internally in everything. Now, this is impossible for us to imagine, because none of us can emulate such qualities of the Lord. But this is what differentiates Krishna from everyone. And unless we understand the science of Krishna, we remain an atheist or an agnostic, and will be confused, and we will make many wrong decisions in our life. It's only when we learn the science of Krishna. Science, real science, means that something is true eternally and in all places and in all circumstances. So that means there's only one thing that is eternally true in all places and all circumstances. That's Krishna. So if you understand Krishna, the science of Krishna, then you will never be fooled, you'll never be an illusion. What is the position of a living entity as opposed to Krishna? Krishna never comes under the influence of Maya, but the living entities all have a tendency of being influenced by Maya. See? So that is the major difference between Krishna and the living entities, the jivas, us. We have the tendency of being illusioned by Maya. Krishna is never illusioned by Maya. So, therefore, it says that Krishna has no particular duties, but he does accept doing things out of love and for his devotees. So, And the devotees have made a decision to desire only to please Krishna. And they're not interested anymore in social issues, political issues, historical issues, differences between the color of one body or the color of another body. They're not interested in any of those things because they know that the primary quality of everything is Krishna, and that everybody has an eternal soul. Every living entity has an eternal soul. So that is the preoccupation of the devotee. He's not preoccupied with the color of the skin or the level of mundane knowledge a person has, or whether they're rich or poor, or whether they're intelligent or stupid. They're just concerned about always glorifying Krishna. And they recognize that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. So they respect all people and all things and all creatures equally. So this is a transcendental position of the Lord. And therefore, Krishna says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyasma chetasa nirasir nirmamo bhutva yudyasva vikatachvara. This is the 3rd chapter, 30th verse, that says, Therefore, Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy. Lethargy means laziness. Fight. So this is the ultimate, let's say, message of Krishna. And the purport says, this verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita. This verse, 3rd chapter, 30th verse. The Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. Now, that's a huge statement right there. If we can understand what that statement means, then we will become Krishna conscious. It says, the Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. What does that mean, military discipline? That means that you cannot refuse to follow an order. If you refuse to follow an order in the military, you'll end up in the military jail very quickly. Right? That's called insubordination. There's no such thing as insubordination in the military, though, right away, because military law is a little bit different than civil laws. Military laws are more or less absolute. Civil laws can be, let's say, manipulated somewhat. But military laws, there's no manipulation. Either you do it or you suffer. And suffering can go right up to being executed, right? And you see there are different governments, like the Russian government. If a soldier refuses to follow the order of the commander, sometimes they kill them for being insubordinate. You know, I mean, at least in the American army, they would prosecute you first, and you'd have a chance to, explain why you refused to follow the order, right? But in other countries, like let's say under Saddam Hussein in Iraq and others, if you refuse to follow an order in the army, they shoot you. There are no questions asked. So we see military discipline is very strict, and Prabhupada is saying here, the Lord, and not only Prabhupada, but Krishna says, the Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. Such an injunction may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence on Krishna, because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. The living entity cannot be happy, independent of the cooperation of the Supreme Lord, because the eternal constitutional position of the living entity is to become subordinate. Whoa, these are big concepts. These are big statements being made here, and they're repeated also in other over and over again in other places in Bhagavad-Gita, like in the 18th chapter. It says, when one acts, Krishna says in the verse, Cetasa sarvakarmani maya sanyasya matpara buddhiyogam upasritya matchita satatam bhava. He says, in all activities, Arjuna, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains, when one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. A servant has no individual independence. He acts only on the order of the master. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by profit and loss. He simply discharges his duty faithfully in terms of the order of the Lord. Yeah, there's this famous British poet, Rudyard Kipling, and he says, theirs is not to question why. Theirs is but to do or die. So that's a very severe way of explaining the same thing. But he was talking about British soldiers. Theirs is not to question why. Theirs is but to do or die. You know, they shouldn't question the correctness or incorrectness of the commander's dictation or command. They simply have to surrender to it and perform the act as a duty. Well, that can be good and that can be bad. When the Lord is dictating, there's no question of opposing his point of view. We should have to follow. That was Arjuna's problem. He refused to follow Krishna's order in the beginning of the Bhagavad-Gita on the battlefield. Why? Because of a material attachment. That's the only reason why we would deny following Krishna's order, because of some material attachment. So what was Arjuna's attachment? He was attached to both sides of his family. Therefore, he said, well, listen, if we win, if the Pandavas win, we kill one side of our family. And if the other side wins, this side of the family dies. So because he was attached to his family on a bodily level, not on a spiritual level, he refused Krishna's order, a direct order from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's how serious it is when we're influenced by illusory ideas, like I am a member of this family, this is my ethnicity, this is my race, this is my color of the skin, this is my way of doing things. In our family, we eat chicken every Sunday, you know, and drink whiskey at the same time. Well, that was my family's custom, you know. Every Sunday we would have chicken and whiskey, you know. So, but all those things are superficial to the living entity, and we don't have any reason to abide by those type of activities. We should be completely dedicated to Krishna. Then we are no longer subject to karma. But if we're dedicated to mundane nature and culture, then we're going to be always under the laws of material nature, under the laws of karma, and we'll always be in trouble. So the biggest obstacle to spiritual life is attachment to false identification with family, friends, ethnicity, nationality, and race, and so forth. That's the biggest obstacle to spiritual life. I'll give you an example. When I was in France, this one person joined our temple. He was a member of the Ahmadi sect of, well, they say Islam, but the Muslims, the Sunni Muslims reject them as Muslims, but they were a member of the Ahmadi sect. So what is particular about the Ahmadi sect? They accept Ahmed Shah as the next prophet after Muhammad. Well, according to traditional Islam philosophy, there are no prophets after Muhammad. He was the last prophet. But in this sect of so-called Islam, they claim that this Ahmed Shah was the next prophet after Muhammad. Because of that, the Muslims in Pakistan and other places kill the Ahmadis. They actually kill them, right? Just like they also kill the Baha'is, or at least they put them in jail and then torture them. So, therefore, this Ahmadi sect, there are very few of them left in Pakistan, or if they are, they practice secretly. But many of them are spread all over the world. So this one boy who was born in a family like that, he joined our temple. And he was a very, very nice boy. And but one day he got a phone call from his mother. And she found out where he was and why he was not communicating. And I was watching him when he was talking to his mother. They were speaking Urdu. And then at one point he puts down the phone and he was like, shocked. So I said, what did she say? And he said, she told me that if I don't immediately come back to Pakistan, she's going to commit suicide. Whoa. So I said, what are you going to do? He said, I have to go back. He said, I have to go back. I said, no, you don't have to go back. Anyway, she's bluffing. She's not going to commit suicide. He said, no, you don't know my mother. He said, she's a fanatic. If I don't go back, she'll definitely kill herself. I said, I'm telling you she's not going to do that. She's just bluffing you. He said, no. So he left. And he was really a good devotee. He was following everything, was very obedient, and he was always, waking up early and chanting his rounds, But he left. Why did he leave? Because he had a false bodily attachment to his family, you see. So that's why I say, and Prabhupada said also, that the biggest obstacle to Krishna consciousness is this false family attachment. Now, there's a correct family attachment and a false family attachment. What is the false family attachment? Attached to all the customs and so-called culture of a mundane family. We eat chicken and drink whiskey every Sunday. Well, that was in my family, right? But that was the thing we had to do every Sunday. And somebody else's family, it might be like one time there was this wedding, and in the beginning of the wedding, there was a bird that fell out of the sky and died right in front of the bride and groom. And when that happened, everyone was shocked. And all of a sudden, the grandfather of the family said, everybody stop, don't move. And then he took his hat off, he had his hat on, he took it off, and he very slowly and solemnly walked toward the dead bird, which was right there in front of the bride and groom, and he put his hat on top of the bird. And then he put his hands up and said, now we can proceed with the marriage. So, when the married couple, after so many years, the father died, and then their kids were going to get married. So the priest asked, are there any special things you want to see in this wedding marriage? He said, yes, we need one dead bird. They said, really? So what for? He said, don't ask any questions. That's our culture. So any marriage, we have to have a dead bird. It's got to fall down. So we'll get somebody up on a ladder and let him drop the bird. So he says, anything else? He said, yeah, I got my dad's hat. He died 10 years ago, but I have his hat. So I have to walk very slowly, I have to have the hat on, then I have to take it off and hold it up in the air like this and walk very slowly. First of all, I have to say, everybody stop. And I have to walk like this very slowly and very slowly put the hat on the dead bird. Then I have to raise my hand and say, okay, now the wedding can proceed. Now, where did that come from, right? A lot of things happen like that, you know. They're habits or things like that. Like one time I was performing a wedding for a Nepali couple, and their parents were there, and they said to me, I asked them, is there anything special? I said, yes, we have to have the string ceremony. I said, the string ceremony? What's that? He said, well, you have to have the string, you know, and the brother has to hold it on one side, and the bride has to hold it on the other side. It has to be so many feet long. I said, okay, then what else happens? Well, we have to have the string, that's all, you know. So they did this, you know. They were holding the string, you know, and saying some things, and, you know, that was part of the wedding. That's the tradition that they have in the Nepali wedding. I'm sure there's more to it that I didn't really understand what it was all about. But you see, these things come up over time, and they become traditions. And people have to follow it, right? Whether they understand it or not. You know? So there are a lot of things like that, and that develop through habit and tradition. Okay, so here we see, in all activities just depend upon me, Krishna says, and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. So Prabhupada explains, when one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. How do you act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord? It's going to explain it now. A servant has no individual independence. He acts only on the order of the master. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by profit and loss. He simply discharges his duty faithfully in terms of the order of the Lord. Now, one may argue that Arjuna was acting under the personal direction of Krishna, but when Krishna is not present, how should one act? That's a very good question, right? Krishna was present 5,000 years ago. Now, 5,000 years later, how should I act? You know, Krishna is not there to tell me what to do. If one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well as under the guidance of the representative of Krishna, then the result will be the same. The Sanskrit word matpara is very important in this verse. It indicates that one has no goal in life save and except acting in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. That's our only goal in life, right? Our goal in life is not, oh, well, in our family, we eat chicken and drink whiskey every Sunday. That's not a goal, you see. And it's that putting the hat on the dead bird, that is not a goal, right? All that stuff is nonsense, right? The only goal of life, or as it says, matpara, is to act in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna. And while working in that way, one should think of Krishna only. Quote, I have been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. End of quote. While acting in such a way, one naturally has to think of Krishna. This is perfect Krishna consciousness. One should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. Well, this is also explained in the 16th chapter, 23rd verse, where it says, Yasastra vidim utshija vartate kama karata. Nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. It's a very nice verse, 16th chapter, 23rd verse. It says, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So what does it mean, acting under one's own whims? As described before, the Shastra Vidhi, or the direction of the Shastra, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. If one does not follow them and acts whimsically, according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he never will be perfect in his life. So acting whimsically means, oh, today I'm not going to go to the class. I'm just going to sleep in. So instead of coming to the class, they sleep. Right? That's a whimsical act. Right? Or someone said, well, I don't have time to offer this food to Krishna. You know, I'll just touch it to my head and eat it. That's a whimsical act, right? Or, I'm not going to go out on Sankirtan this week because I got too many important things to do. I got to watch the Super Bowl. But that's a whimsical act, see? So a devotee, 24 hours a day, will only do things that are pleasing to Krishna. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varachanam. So these are the two fundamental points of Sharanagati. Always accept to do what is favorable for Krishna, always reject to do what is not favorable to Krishna. If you follow those two rules, you will avoid a lot of problems in life. Right? But if we act whimsically, say, well, today I'm going to take a little break and do some nonsense, because I haven't been able to do any nonsense for a long time. Ari Vilas keeps telling me, do this, do that, do this, do that. I don't have any time to do any nonsense. So today I'm going to just do nonsense. You know? Right? Well, that's whimsical. Right? So, in other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his, if one is so fortunate by such practice to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. Success is guaranteed for the strict practitioner. This Rupa Goswami says this in the Nectar of Devotion. Success is guaranteed for the strict practitioner, and failure is guaranteed for the loose practitioner, who sometimes wants to do service and sometimes acts whimsically and avoids doing service. And that's the case of most people. They're not really serious about dutifully acting. They are whimsical. Okay, so then in the Vedic literature, the ways of action and reaction are prescribed to enable one to come to the stage of purification. The whole method is based on giving up lust, greed, and anger. By cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position of self-realization. This self-realization is perfected in devotional service. In that devotional service, the liberation of the conditioned soul is guaranteed. The liberation from what? Birth, death, old age, and disease. And going back to Godhead. It's guaranteed. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, there are instituted the 4 orders of life and the 4 statuses of life. That is, the 4 varnas and the 4 ashramas. There are called the caste system and the spiritual order system. There are different rules and regulations for different castes or divisions of society, and if a person is able to follow them, he will be automatically raised to the highest platform of spiritual realization. Then he can have liberation without a doubt. Okay, so therefore it says that that sort of duty, when one person becomes whimsical, is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. One should act according to the order of Krishna. This is a very important point. That order of Krishna comes through disciplic succession, through parampara, from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets a bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, then one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. So, and then there are two spiritual masters. There's Shiksha and Diksha Guru, but even more, there is the external spiritual master and the internal spiritual master, which is called Chaita Guru. That is Krishna as Paramatma. He can. We usually don't hear the Paramatma, but when you become very purified, then you also hear Paramatma. Right? So, but whatever you think that you hear from Paramatma, you have to double check it with the spiritual master. Like, for example, let's say you have a dream and you see Krishna and he hands you a knife and he says, go and stab your wife to death. Right? Now, you wake up and you say, oh my God, Krishna appeared right in front of me, gave me the knife, and said I should kill my wife. I better double check this, because that's what it says in Bhagavad-Gita, 18th chapter, 58th verse. Let's read what it says. Krishna says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains, a person in full Krishna consciousness is not unduly anxious about executing the duties of his existence. The foolish cannot understand this great freedom from anxiety. Just like, we're like just 2 days away from Janmashtami, a huge festival, right? That we're going to be busy and for 3 days, right? And a lot of people are going to come, and it's going to be a real challenge, right? So someone might feel a little bit of anxiety, just like, right before Ananda Mela, we're going to be, for 3-4 days, we're going to be, engaged in very intense activity. I personally did not sleep more than 3 hours in a 3-day period, right? It was so busy, there was no time to sleep. And I had to wake up and continue, right? So it is stressful, and you think, how am I going to do this, getting older, and how am I going to do all this? But we should not have that anxiety, because Krishna is going to help us if we are sincere, right? And every day I did chant my rounds before as soon as, like one time I went to sleep at 3 o'clock, at 2:30, I woke up 3:30 and I chanted my rounds, right? So, but why? Because out of duty, not because I like to do it or I want to do it, but it's something I have to do, right? Because we have to chant our rounds every day. Okay, so it says here, for one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the most intimate friend. He always looks after his friend's comfort, and he gives himself to his friend, who is so devotedly engaged, working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. 24 hours a day? Yeah, because before you go to sleep at night, you pray, please Krishna, let me wake up early, chant my rounds, go to Mangala Aarti, and do all the things that are pleasing to you. Right? So, therefore, we are working 24 hours a day, and that's why we limit our sleep maximum 6 hours. But as you get older and more experienced, you can get by with 2 or 3 or 4 hours of sleep. You don't have to have 6 hours. But that you cannot do that artificially. You have to regulate your eating and be very strict about going to sleep early and so forth. So it's not something you should try and do artificially. It'll come naturally as you get older, and also as you no longer have so many duties in family affairs. You'll be able to do these things, and you'll see how Krishna is helping you. So, but as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated free from the material perplexities, one should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool. Whirlpool is like this very strong circular current that when you get there, it takes you down. And people drown like that, especially in a place like in Orissa and Jagannath Puri. The ocean there is very dangerous because there are circular currents not very far off the beach. If you get caught in it, it takes you down and you die. You know, there are other places in the world there are currents like that also. You're swimming and you come to this place where there's a very very powerful downward spiral of current, and it just takes you down and you drown, right? So that's what a whirlpool is. It's a strongly circulating current that pulls you down. So therefore it says, but as soon as he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is liberated, free from the material perplexities. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. No conditioned soul actually knows what is to be done and what is not to be done. But a person who acts in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within, that's the Chaitya Guru, and confirmed by the spiritual master without. So, therefore, if you have a dream and you see Krishna and he gives you hands you a knife, he says, go and stab your wife to death. When you wake up, what do? Immediately go and see Gurudev and say, Gurudev, I had this dream last night. Krishna appeared in front of me and handed me a knife, told me to kill my wife. What should I do? Chant Hare Krishna and forget about what you saw, because that was an illusory dream. Now, on the other hand, Gurudev, last night I had a dream. Prabhupada appeared in front of me and he told me that I should always be engaged in Krishna consciousness. And what should I do with this thing that I saw, this dream? I said, that was a genuine dream. Follow what Prabhupada told you. You see? So it has to be confirmed that you have the internal guru, that's Chaitya Guru, and you have the external guru, that's Siksha and Diksha Guru. So whatever you see internally, you have to have it validated by the external guru. Right? Okay. So this is the culture of Krishna consciousness. And as Krishna promises, he says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So, every day we're coming to hear Krishna Katha. Why? Because our disease is forgetfulness. In other words, it goes in one ear, comes out the other ear, right? So, in order to, therefore, repetition is an important principle in spiritual life. It's not hackneyed. That's a good word. Look that up. H-A-C-K. N-E-Y, yeah. What's it say? It's not hackneyed.
Commonplace. Overused.
Yeah, it's not like same old, same old. Oh, Prabhupada says the same thing all the time. Chant Hare Krishna. You know, I already know this. No, you don't know it. It's important that we hear it regularly, right? That's why we repeat the Vedic mantras also, like the Brahma Samhita and the prayers of the spiritual master and all these things. This repetition is very important, you know, for advancing in spiritual life. Okay, so what time is it now? Is it 7:15?
7:16.
Yeah. All right, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yes.
I think that analogy to following the discipline like militarily.
Military discipline.
Military discipline. Of course, there maybe it's out of compulsion or if there is a fear, but here we need to do that voluntarily.
Well, it's not a question. Well, we have to act dutifully. It's a duty. It's
Yeah.
something we cannot ignore.
Ignore.
Right. So, of course, in World War II, after the war was over, they prosecuted, the Americans and the British prosecuted Nazi leaders, right? Especially the ones that were involved with the concentration camps where they killed people, right? Not necessarily the generals who were on the battlefield and leading their men, but especially those who were in the concentration camps and the leaders who organized the concentration camps where they actually killed people who were not necessarily soldiers or enemy soldiers. They were just ordinary people, right? So when that trial took place in Nuremberg, a lot of these Nazi leaders who organized the concentration camps and the gas chambers and all those things, they were on trial. And their point was, well, listen, we're just soldiers, and we were told to do these things. We're just following our superiors. But the argument was, wait a minute, you were the superiors. Oh, no, we were just following what Hitler said, you know. They said, no. That's not permitted in war. If you're on the battlefield and you kill an enemy soldier, okay, you're not going to be prosecuted. If you take an enemy prisoner and you shoot them right away, then you're going to be prosecuted. But this is different than that. You're taking people like communists and Jews and gypsies only because they have a certain cultural or racial identification, and you're taking them and you're throwing them into a gas chamber and killing them, right? So that is a crime against humanity. It's different than fighting on a battlefield, right, with guns and bombs and killing enemy soldiers. So they couldn't use that excuse that we were simply following orders, because that's not part of war. You just take innocent citizens and you just kill them, right? They're not enemy soldiers. And you're killing them because of racial or ethnic identification, right? So that's what racism is. The German philosophy that Hitler had propounded, and it was also Nietzsche, that was a German philosopher, was that the Germanic race, blonde hair, blue eyes, tall, white men and women, are the superior race and the most important race. And then there are other races that are much inferior and they don't even deserve to live, like gypsies or Jews or communists, right? So that's not war. That is murder, right? And therefore they were prosecuted and they were executed, you know. Okay, so therefore there's a difference between dutifully acting according to the principles of wartime and whimsically killing people just because of their race or their ethnicity or their religion. Right? Okay, any other questions?
Maharaj, just to follow up, do we say that if we continue to, this is where I think sadhana, bhakti right now, where and where in the dutiful state. But at some point, it will not look like duty because we start loving it.
Well, loving Krishna, there's a difference between sadhana bhakti and raganuga bhakti, right? Sadhana bhakti is acting dutifully under the tutelage of bona fide spiritual masters, right? And it's regimented, right? You have to wake up early, you have to do this, you have to do that, so many things. Why? Because we don't really have love of God. But by acting on the level of sadhana bhakti in a very dutiful way, at a certain point, we will develop that love for God. And when you have that spontaneous love for God, then you're no longer hamstrung by rules and regulations, because you only have pure love for the Lord. So everything you do is out of pure love. So the gopis, for example, Lord Chaitanya's mother, when he took sannyas and he basically went away, right? So she would chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and every round she would chant, she would take one grain of rice and put it, in like maybe a little dish. So. And she would only eat the number of times she chanted rounds. So if she chanted 100 rounds, she would have 100 pieces of rice in that little dish, and that's all she would eat. Right? She had so much love for her son, Lord Chaitanya, that she wasn't in any way, let's say, inconvenienced by such severe austerity, right? It was out of love for him, and the fact that she was chanting Hare Krishna very diligently, and saying every word very clearly. She was not trying to go too fast to get to finish. She was just completely immersed in the holy name of the Lord. So there's a difference between acting dutifully and then acting spontaneously out of love for the Lord. When you're spontaneously acting out of love and attraction for the Lord, you're not really, let's say, obliged to follow all the rules and regulations. Right? But you're not the one that's going to decide to do that. When the spiritual master sees that you have advanced to this point of spontaneous love, then he will put you or introduce you to one of the gopis in Vrindavan, and she will train you how to advance to this spontaneous loving state. So there's always going to be somebody that's going to instruct us and say, it's not that, now I'm ready for Raganuga Bhakti. No, it's not like that. But the Guru will put you under the supervision of one of the gopis in Vrindavan. And so you understand, this is like, the transcendental world now. You're no longer in the material world. And then she will train you in a particular way to serve Krishna with spontaneous love. So it's not that, now I'm on that level and I'll just start being spontaneously Raganuga Bhakti. No, it's not like that. Haribol. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, as you have mentioned, before even big events, one should not have even anxiety. So for a neophyte, Maharaj, neophyte knows theoretically, we should not have anxiety, but practically when the time comes and we are going through that events, so anxiety comes to a neophyte. So how neophyte will handle practically no anxiety? Means theoretically is there, but practically anxiety comes when we are executing.
One time one of the early times that I went to India, and I was in Vrindavan, and I chose to do the Vrindavan parikrama, but you have to get up like 3:30 in the morning to do it. And I got up and I took a shower, and I started walking from our temple to the parikrama trail that goes, you'll go all the way around Vrindavan, right? But it starts very early in the morning. Anyway, I was shocked to see there were a lot of people, and there was no lights, right? So it was very dark, but you can feel the people running past you or bumping into you, right? And there were a lot of people running, a lot of women and men running toward the beginning of the parikram route. So I just went along with them, right? And it was very dark. Nobody had a flashlight, but some people knew where to go, I guess. So I was just following the crowd. So at one point of the parikram, you go through this very tight space into a room. Now, I if it was daytime and I saw it, I wouldn't have done it, right? But I was just following the crowd. So at one point, they're pushing me through this small space, and we get into a room where it's completely crowded, right? And it's not a big room; it's a small room. I could hardly breathe, and then suddenly I realized, my God, if someone panics here, we could all die, right? So I just closed my thought process off, and it just was chanting, and we're inching our way toward the other side of the room where there's another small space that you have to sort of, if I was overweight, I would have probably been dead, right? So after about 10 minutes in that room with all these people, and everyone's just inching their way little by little, and I was just focusing on chanting, and I said, well, I'm going to die, so I may as well just chant Hare Krishna, right? So I somehow or other I get to that tight opening, and they push me, right? The other people behind push me, and I got through, So most of the Indian women, they were somewhat small and thin, right? So it was no problem for them getting through. But me, coming from America, it was a problem, So they realized that, so they pushed me really hard, and somehow or other I squeezed through that space. And then I came out in the open, and I was still alive. I was like, I said, I guess this is why I came to India, because, you end up in these situations where you can easily die. So you have to completely depend on Krishna. So anyway, there was another devotee, an Indian devotee that was there, and he was an ISKCON devotee. So we come now to the Yamuna River, and he said, well, you have to, strip down to your, just to have a little bit of cloth on your body, and you go into the river. I said, what? I said, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like freezing cold. He said, just listen to what I say. Take off your most of your clothes and just go. So I said, you sure? I said, I touched the water. It was cold. He said, no. Just listen to what I say. I said, okay. So I have like a little lungi on. I took most of my clothes off. And then we're starting to go into water, and it's really cold, right? And there's no lights again. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. But then when we got into where the water is up to my neck, it wasn't cold. It was warm. And he was looking at me and smiling and says, is it cold? I said, no, it's warm. He said, see, this is Krishna's special mercy on us. It was cold before, but now that you're neck deep, water is warm. So Krishna was always taking care of his devotee. So that was like a lesson, opened my eyes. So in the same way, look, you're in anxiety. I was in anxiety, right? Going into that cold water early in the morning. But then when you got into the water, we saw it wasn't cold. It was actually warm. So in the same way, you might have an anxiety, but once you get into it with full attention, you'll see that Krishna is helping. And he helped us, right? We were able to get through that whole 4 days. So that is when you become more experienced in Krishna consciousness by putting yourself in a very, let's say, stressful situation, but because it's for Krishna, he helps you. And then you develop more and more faith that I shouldn't be in anxiety. I should just follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness, and Krishna will take care of everything. Haribol. Okay, we'll stop right there. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
चरण पद्म केवल बकाती सद्मा
Shri Guru Charana Kevala Bhakti Sadma
बंदो मोई सावधाना माते जहर प्रसादे बार ए भवतोरिया जाय कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जा होते गुरु मुख पद्म वक्य चितिते गौरिया क्या
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittete Koriya
अरना कोरी हो माने आशा
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
श्री गुरु चराने रति ऐसे उत्तम गति
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati
जय प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
Bhakti Jaha Hote Avidya Vinasa Jate
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
Prema Bhakti Jaha Hote Avidya Vinasa
वेदे गाय जाहरा चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया हा हा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पद छाया एबे जास गोशुक त्रिभुवाना श्रील प्रभुपाद पतित पवाना जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय प्रभुपद जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद
Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajagachasta Tarasatara Shri Shri Shrimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Friends of the whole Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanand. All glories to the Sublime. All glories to the Sublime. All glories to the Sublime. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Bhavan Ki Jai. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. The lotus feet
of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean and of material suffering, obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend that born, Lord and Master devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet.